Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. We're here this afternoon for a work session regarding 2026 budget targets, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges analysis. I'm Kristen Stevens, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. With me is my fellow Commissioner John Kafalis, and Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally will be joining us shortly. We also have our county manager with us, Lorinda Volker, and I will turn things over to Josh Fudge, our Director of Performance, Budget and Strategy, to kick things off this afternoon. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Josh Fudge. I'm the county's Director of Performance, Budget and Strategy. With me today are Matthew Bohunen, our budget team lead, and Alex Jordan, our budget analyst. And it will actually be Matt leading the presentation, and we're happy to fill in. So thanks for having us.
Thank you, Josh. And Matthew, we'll let you do your magic.
Okay, here's our agenda. Three main topics today. We're going to review actual revenues and actual expenses through the first 4 months of the year through April 2025. We're going to review, every year we do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges review. Every service area gets together and talks about those items and does a self-analysis. Then we'll talk about the 2026 budget. This is the work session where we review the initial general fund support targets, and it is a kickoff to the 2026 budget process. Next Friday, we'll sit down with all of the departments and elected offices, and we'll publish these targets and talk about the budget timeline. So just to start off with actual revenues, these are the object categories, the major classifications. County-wide, property tax collections are up 3.9% over 2024, and there was no reappraisal this year, right? So if you remember last year, because of the special session, there was a delay in the start of when mill levies were certified. And so that increase is really an artificial increase due to that delay last year. Sales tax is up 1.4% through the first 3 months of the year. We have met with Tracy Hines, the sales tax administrator, about these numbers, and we suspect that it may be front-loading. That means purchasing in advance of tariffs. All of the state forecasts and our analysis show that there will be either flat or declining sales tax revenues in the longer term. And this summer, we are anxious to find out more about the uncertainty around tariffs and the impact on sales tax. But for now, we're up over last year, just a little bit. Intergovernmental revenue is up 22%. This is being skewed by mostly DNR, Department of Natural Resources, partnership with Fort Collins on acquiring open lands. With that partnership, if we're the fiscal agent, we receive a revenue in order to complete a purchase. Human Services and Health, which are the other departments with significant intergovernmental revenues, are both about flat. Interest earnings are down 14%. This is just due to the normal fluctuations of how much is invested and when it comes into the county. So that it's going to be very similar to last year in terms of the number we expect. External charges, these are anything from the fees at the landfill to event income at the ranch, park camping permits at Department of Natural Resources. So just to review some of those, solid waste revenues are a little bit down from last year, whereas the ranch is doing really well compared to last year with event income. And then also we have some new charges at behavioral health going to effect this year. So those are the main revenue categories. Any questions or details we can pull up? Alex has the whole budget if you want to have a question about a program.
I just had a question about so the external charges for solid waste, is that tipping fees and things like that? Is that what that is? Are we seeing those go, you said those are going down. Are we seeing that because of maybe fewer trucks from Fort Collins dumping at the landfill, or do we have any idea of why those numbers are down?
I can follow up with Dwayne, but I do know that we increased the fee a little bit this year, and that was intentional because we're at the end of life of the landfill. And so they're trying to preserve the last remaining space until the new north landfill is complete.
And I saw Leslie Ellis nodding her head that was true, that there's some trucks that have been not dumping at our landfill, so, yeah, okay, thank you for that. Welcome Commissioner Shattuck McNally, and, yeah, we'll keep going.
Okay, so on the expenses, these are just overall large object categories. Pretty flat compared to last year in personnel and operating. Personnel's up 3%. The market increases on all pay ranges went up in January 1st, according to HR's recommendation. And operating expenses, again, this is countywide, all departments are down 3%, which is pretty close to flat. Capital spending is up significantly over the first 4 months of last year due to large capital expenses for the new north landfill, and then also significant land acquisition from the Department of Natural Resources.
Yeah, of course, please go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Matthew. Operating expenses down by 3%. Is that because we're such excellent fiscal stewards or very efficient? Why?
While Alex is pulling up the operating category by department and fund, would remind everybody that this is everything that is not a salary or benefit. It's the consulting costs, the supplies, the regular operating expenses that you would purchase with a P card. And to answer your question, that are we good stewards of taxpayer dollars? That's one of the guiding principles that we
Yes, I know.
reiterate constantly. We have also been talking to the departments about the long-term financial sustainability of property taxes and looking for efficiency projects. But is there any specific department, Alex, that we could point to for?
I appreciate it. I think you folks have
We can follow up with an email maybe and
really answered the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I
both.
think I'll add that 3% at this point in the year is pretty much on target, unexpected. We budget for the whole year and things happen throughout the course of the year. So I don't know that I'd raise a lot of interest in 3%. If it was 30%, that would be a different question.
Thank you both. Thank you.
we'll get you a summary though. Okay.
We're good to keep going?
So moving on to the SWOC analysis, we emailed you the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and challenges for every service area. And then on the presentation is a consolidated list of themes that were consistent across multiple service areas and departments. So starting with strengths, longstanding culture of fiscal stewardship, maybe that answers your question. We feel we do well at complying with state and federal statutes. We know what the rules are and we abide by them. We have a skilled, resilient workforce. We have a strong culture of innovation and collaboration. We look for better, new ways to do things constantly. We have a focus on data, using data to make decisions. We have multiple strategic and long-range plans that we're always looking at how to be most effective in terms of responding to community needs. We have strong project and change management and dedicated positions for that. Strength is in our security and emergency readiness. And both we're customer focused and we still value equity, diversity, and inclusion. Moving on to opportunities. These are external strengths, or internal opportunities are the things outside of the organization that we look at. We have opportunities for strong regional collaboration and partnerships. We have a growing and an engaged resident population. We are expanding our broadband network, and there's opportunities that come with that. There are new digital tools. We have opportunities around sustainability and using alternative fuels. There are opportunities with public safety and synergies. I think that refers to maybe the Behavioral Health Center and also the departments within the public safety service area and the courts working on sharing data and best practices. We have opportunities with policy advocacy and emergency preparedness. Okay. Any questions about the strengths or opportunities before we go to the weaknesses and challenges?
Any questions? Okay. I think we're good.
Okay. So weaknesses, you can kind of see us moving away from some of the challenges and weaknesses related to COVID and into maybe an era of uncertainty with federal and state and local funding. So funding constraints was the number one. It was called out that in some departments there's a uncertain employee pipeline to leadership. So with the succession planning, some departments may have are doing a better job than others. There's pay pressure in specific roles. There's the compliance and oversight strain, which relates to the funding constraints. Limits with capacity and our ability to serve a growing need. The siloed teams, this one you'll see, it's been a weakness for many years due to the, I think, nature of the county being a decentralized organization with multiple elected offices and departments working on very different things. Decentralized external communication was called out, and some security vulnerabilities.
Commissioner Shannon McNally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you expand a little bit more and maybe help me understand? I think I know what you're talking about, decentralized external communication, but can you just maybe give an example or expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So we have the Public Affairs Office here, the County Commissioner's Office. The Sheriff's Office has a PIO. The District Attorney has communication staff. The Health Department, Extension, Department of Natural Resources does marketing. And we are coordinated but not centralized, right? So there's a decentralized model for external communication with the public for each of the different services. And maybe we could be better at consistent branding, having a unified message. And that's actually one of the areas that we're reviewing,
Thank you.
how we do communication.
Thank you.
Okay. So challenges. These again are external. Uncertain fiscal future, where state and federal funds are going to come from and at what levels. The cost of living in northern Colorado has dramatically increased over the past few years. Increasing and shifting state requirements. Rising hostility towards government services, government in general. There's a shift in demographics, and our population is starting to age, which brings challenges to specific programs. We still have many large unfunded capital needs with facilities and transportation. The increase in the number and the size of natural disasters, cybersecurity risks, phishing, deep fakes, AI, and then just the complex public safety landscape. So encourage you to review the individual service areas for more specifics, or if any of these jumped out at you and we want to answer some more specifics, we're happy to dig deeper.
Any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just one question. Can you clarify the distinction? Here we talk about cybersecurity risks, and in the previous slide regarding weaknesses, we talk about security vulnerabilities. What does all that mean?
So I guess security vulnerabilities would be the areas that are internal to the county, so maybe facility security, as well as the cybersecurity is something we respond to, so it might be a weakness or a challenge. But I think cybersecurity would be related to a security vulnerability. But you could add, facility, physical infrastructure vulnerabilities.
I would add to cybersecurity that some of our systems are not ours, so they belong to the state, and we don't have control over their security. So that would be, I think, how it made it to the external challenge. Yeah, we have a lot of control over what we do and how we manage our systems, but our network is also open to the human services software, the motor vehicle software, those kind of things that we must use, but we don't have any ownership over.
Anything else? Go ahead, Commissioner.
So, complex public safety landscape, is that discussing kind of our increasing law enforcement and criminal justice needs? Is there more are you talking mostly about the size of that in our budget, or the extra unfunded mandates sometimes put in that area, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, it would be all of the above. Where there's opportunities for data sharing and collaboration, there's also challenges. I think it might also be referring to some of the addiction and behavioral health challenges with public safety, and of course, natural disasters and our ability to respond to them.
With that was my next question about the increasing number and expense of natural disasters. We certainly have had a few varied wildfires and post-fire debris flows and flooding, which has been a strain. I'm curious, did you look at, when you looked at that as a challenge, did you use data about the high-risk area that we are? Did that come into the numbers, or is it just kind of, how do you measure that?
I think it was both, Commissioner. So what the team did is they distilled the things that came up in each of the service categories. And so if you talk to emergency services, they'll tell you, we know we're in a high-risk area. They'll also tell you across the state and the nation, there are more of these kind of things happening, and they're more expensive to recover from. So I think it's, the list you're seeing on the screen is a distillation of what each of the groups came up with. So I would say, if you flip to the public safety one, you'll probably find a lot more detail about that.
And then I'm curious, thank you for that, Lorenda. That also with changing climate, that we have our climate sustainability office, but that also is kind of a factor as well as, I don't know if that was taken into consideration, but it's also kind of a factor. Changing conditions makes it even more so. Okay. Obviously, none of these are a surprise. And I appreciate some of these that I was surprised to see on the list when I would review these last night and the night before. But I'm glad that you added them because I do think they're important. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just add that the uncertain fiscal future, I mean, if things were more certain and more stable, some of these other bullet points wouldn't necessarily, right? I mean, a lot of them are affected by funding, maybe not rising hostility towards government, but, I think that the fiscal picture is really complex, and, as we move through the community and talk to different groups, people are really curious to see, about what's happening at the state and federal level and how that affects us at the local level. So I think telling our story around, the uncertainties that we're facing, the challenges that we're facing, is a really important piece for folks to know. And I mean, hopefully people are listening online. And but I saw one of the challenges was sort of like not having a big local media presence. And I think that makes that telling the story piece become more challenging. So I think we have to be creative around how we communicate to folks that as the landscape changes, the services that we offer may have to change. And so, I'm curious about how we do that because I don't have any, answers, and I hope our people in our public relations have more answers than I do. But I think that piece is really important. Because we're facing challenges in so many areas at this point without those federal and state dollars, that, what we do may look different in coming years. It's more of an editorial than it was a question, I'm sorry.
Well, that's a great point, and I think it's important to make that point, that we are very uncertain right now about if we have a natural disaster, will FEMA be an agency that can help support recovery? What will happen with our human services benefits payments and qualifying folks for Medicaid? I think those are big things that we are involved in across the community, and how we talk about that will be very important as we go forward, so that the community understands these are not decisions we've made, maybe locally even. These are things that we're being told to implement that we don't have a lot of control over. And so creating understanding about that is I think the right thing to do.
Yeah, and, for folks who are listening, we are trying to pursue those dollars and put pressure on some of our state and federal leaders around, unfunded mandates and how important these dollars are to our communities. So there is work being done, behind the scenes to try to let our federal partners especially understand how valuable these dollars are at the local level. So just, I guess I want people to be aware of that as well, that we are really working hard and working with our fellow local governments to make a case sort of statewide that these dollars are crucial to us being able to rebuild after disasters, to be able to take care of vulnerable people in our community. So, there again, for the dozens of people that are listening, please spread the word that this is something that's very critical to the work that we're doing right now, and that we are on top of it.
Okay, so as we get into the budget timeline, just a reminder, the reason we do the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges analysis is you will see in the fall budget requests and service proposals related to some of these themes. These shouldn't be too surprising. Hopefully they're not. You see these issues every week at work sessions and in the strategic plan. That a lot of these are referenced, but we can point back to them as that we know that they are issues as we review the budgets of 2026. So here we are today, we're setting the initial general fund projection and targets. And we are also, Alex and I and Josh are hard at work putting all the information together for the budget software, our Questica system. All the internal charges are being reviewed and set. In June and through August, so over the summer, this when departments prepare budget requests. We always have them due the first or the second Friday in August. So that's when they're due to our office for review, and we start meeting with every single office and department. Over the summer, we also do public outreach. We typically will get on your calendar to accompany you to community conversations. We'll have a budget retreat this summer. And June 18th is probably the next major date for the budget in terms of public meeting with you all. That's where Human Resources will come in and recommend merit and market increases for personnel for 2026 after reviewing all of the data and with our peers. Then once we get to September, that's when the county manager and our office meet again with every single office and review all the positions, every line, every service proposal, and the 5-year capital plans for the entire county.
So that's the meeting where we also hope to be able to receive ideas for reductions and efficiencies and service changes. So when we have the meetings individually, we'll talk through those ideas so that when we meet with you again, we have good, solid information about how we might achieve our reductions.
And then we will meet with you in September about all of those decisions. And by the end of September, we will also have the assessor's initial certification of values. So the assessor sends you all a letter certifying that this is the total assessed value, including the tax increment financing districts for all of Larimer County for 2026. And then by October 15th, statutory deadline, the county manager must submit a proposed budget to you all. And we publish that on our county website. Then we have a public work session on what's in the proposed budget. We review everything that's recommended. There's a public hearing. November 3rd is, I believe, a Monday is when it's scheduled for this year. And then Election Day is also big for the budget because we live in Colorado and any tax increase must go to the voters. And so we always pin that on the calendar. If there's anything on the ballot, we're watching for that so we can make adjustments accordingly. Then in late November, early December, we get a final certification of values from the assessor's office, and we're able to adopt the budget. And that's when you all take the vote to adopt the budget and certify mill levies. And then we start all over again. Okay, so before we get into the actual target numbers, I think Josh wanted to update you all on where we are at with the process of looking for efficiencies, projects, data analyses we're doing.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. So we have challenged our elected offices and departments to identify roughly $6 million in expenditure reductions and at the very least expenditure avoidance in the future due to all of the financial and fiscal uncertainty that we discussed before to make sure that we're on a long-term sustainable path. Those ideas have been coming in. We actually started back in February at a department heads meeting where they came up with several ideas. We've started vetting those. We also put out a challenge on our Nectar system, awarded points to employees to come up with ideas. They could also submit them anonymously through our open voice system. We've gotten almost 200 individual ideas, so I want to thank all of the employees who submitted those ideas. They range anywhere from saving a few minutes a day to really saving some significant funds. So we are actively evaluating all of those, and we've created a tracking sheet on the intranet, on the B board, that employees can check out the progress of that. For the most part, we've just gotten started with those. So there will be some ideas certainly there that we think we can implement that will save some time. And we've also started discussing other ideas that we've identified as well. And so we'll be discussing those with departments and elected offices this summer, and you will be seeing more information about that both at the retreats that are scheduled and then also in the proposed budget. So that work is underway.
Questions or comments? Lorinda, did you have anything to say anything about that?
Yeah, I think I'll say what I've asked the budget office to do, in addition to what the departments are doing, is look at every program, look at everything we do, that there are no protected programs or services that we have. Every idea should be looked at, every stone should be overturned, because they see the picture from a little different point of view than the folks who do the business. And then we've asked department heads to be open to these questions. This does not mean that their position or their their program is not valuable. Everything I think the county does is valuable. The question is, do we do it in the way that we're mandated to do it? Do we do more than we're supposed to do? Where are opportunities that we might present to you all that might be feasible? Not every idea is feasible. We have a very long list, and some of them are things that we don't really want to tackle right now. We may have to if things get more dire, but there's definitely some low-hanging fruit that they're exploring. So kudos to this team for going in and doing that work, and to the leadership team for not taking those questions personally and as value statements about their services. So we are really trying to approach this from the most complete ethical lens that we can, and be good stewards of resources, and respect that these services all touch a person in some way. And so that balance is what we'll bring to you after we get through all of these meetings and have all of these discussions. But know that that we are making ourselves uncomfortable, as we should, to try to reach these goals. We know that folks are in public service to serve the public, and that is a difficult thing to talk about, contracting from that a little bit. So first, we'll look at efficiencies. First, we'll look at where we can share resources. But ultimately, things may look different.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Lorinda, and I think that was a great comment that you just made about how it is a little uncomfortable when we're in public service trying to contract from that, maybe possibly a little bit, especially when everyone sees the increase in need and increase in people that need help. So I really appreciate you making that comment, because it is uncomfortable to have to think about that when we see that there's lots of increase across the board, across the whole county and across the region. So I really appreciate you stating that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything, Commissioner Cavalas, please?
Thank you. And thank you, Lorinda. And I believe I've asked this question before, but in terms of the ideas and the various departments and elected offices, the Commissioner's office, we're also looking at cost containment ideas.
Absolutely, yes. We are not excluded, not protected. Everything that we do is being looked at in the same way every other office and department is being looked at. Yes.
Yeah, I think that, oh, did you have more?
No, that's fine. I
Okay.
guess that's fine.
Okay, if you had it.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that this is a really important exercise for us to do, and we run pretty lean as it is, so we're asking folks to dig a little deeper, and that is a tough ask, and yet, we want to be sustainable into the future, as was said, and so I think this definitely is a big part of being good fiscal stewards. And so how do we do the work that we do better, more efficiently? And in some cases, where are spaces where we can cut back, potentially services, because we need to. So there again, I think that's really important for the public to know that as we see a decrease in dollars and as we see some our need to be more self-sufficient as in local government, we just have to do this kind of exercise. We just have to do this work. So appreciate both the staff and the department heads. 200 ideas is a lot of ideas, and so that's remarkable. It shows that while it's difficult to find these things, people have very much a willingness to do this work and to help. Because they also understand that we just aren't probably going to get the dollars that we're used to getting. And so just really want to thank staff and everyone who's participated in this exercises. As was said, we'll consider all ideas. And so thank you again for being a part of what is not an easy thing to do.
Okay, so our approach to budgeting is called incremental budgeting. Maybe you've heard of zero-based or priority-based, or there's different budgeting systems, and we use a modified incremental, which means we take what was approved for the current year, we apply inflators, what we think the cost of business to continue to do business is going to be going into next year, and then we take out any programs that were one-time in nature, capital projects, or temporary positions. And then we do the same thing on the revenue side. If we think there's going to be an increase or a decrease in revenue, we'll inflate that or lower it. As you can see with sales tax, we're lowering the estimate for 2026. And then the gap for general fund departments is what we call the target. And so you in the system next week after we finalize everything, departments will go in and they'll see that their budget is built to that gap. And if they need to add anything for unique program cost increases or specific capacity needs, they put in a budget request. We call them service proposals. And then all those service proposals are reviewed along with any required budget reductions that we ask departments to submit. And then you all are presented with those changes, those incremental changes to the base budget, and that's what becomes the final proposed budget. Now, this
So-
year,
Matthew, I want to just stop there a second because
Okay.
I think I want to make sure it's really clear. We are looking at reductions. At the same time, we understand that goods and services go up in cost, and so we still have to provide a breadth of services to the community. So that's why we build in these numbers. We know that if the state provides wage increases to staff, that we need to keep that up as well. We may have different staff. We may take advantage of vacancies and make reductions through attrition. We may have fewer people because of that. But the folks that stay, we want to maintain that market base so that we maintain, strong employee base. The same is true for expenses. We know that contracts for services, that materials we need to pave roads or to build buildings or maintain buildings are going up. So we're realistic about that. That does not signal, though, that we aren't still looking for these reductions. And I think when you look at this, folks might think that. And so for anyone who's listening, we're doing both. We're being realistic, and we're also looking at opportunities to be more efficient and reduce costs.
Thank you.
absolutely. And I mentioned zero-based budgeting. That's where you start from zero, from scratch, and you build up a budget, reviewing every position and every line for its need. And that effort takes more staff time and more analysis. So we don't do it for every department every year, but this year we are going to be doing zero-based budgeting for engineering and community development. And this might be something that we bring back in years ahead for specific departments, where we do incremental for most county departments, but zero-based for specific departments that may need a good time to review.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know who wants to answer this question. Watching community budgets, and I know my colleagues have experience with different kinds of budgets for municipalities and the state legislature, but watching, some of the strategic budget proposal teams I sat on for the school district for many years and other items, and every entity has a different way of approaching this. So my curiosity that I've been thinking about the last few days is when you talk about we've always been incremental, has that been for many years? Was there a time where we used more of a zero-based budgeting or a different system all along? I mean, what kind of success or is it just kind of flexibility depending on the times? Because I know that we haven't always had times where sales tax is up and down, and we've had, over the years, we can think all the way back to 2008, 9, and 10 when things were not so fun, and during COVID. And I'm wondering, there's probably some analysis exemplars, but also just from your history of writing these out, what seems to be the best way, for you all, for the county, because we're way different than other organizations, I know, so it's really got to be unique for the county, in what I think is probably unique for the county, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so I can tackle that one. So in the 10 years that I've been here, we've generally used this incremental budgeting approach. As Matt said, we kind of account for the fixed costs to keep things running as they are. I think that the last time a very different approach was taken was after 2008. when property tax revenue was down. I know they engaged in a priority-based system where everybody kind of ranked the services and then tried to provide the resources to the highest priority. We've been fortunate since I've been here that in general, the kind of keep the lights on process has worked. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that we don't identify those areas where there could be reductions. Sometimes departments have come and said, we're going to be spending less on this. Can we spend it on that? And we'll provide a recommendation to the commissioners, and they'll say, we'd rather not. So we do go, as Matt mentioned earlier, kind of line by line, and we identify those areas maybe where there's big surpluses that aren't needed anymore, and we can reallocate those to other things. So the incremental approach is really kind of for this beginning process, if you will, to sort of set the base for how the budget will go, and then we get into much more detail as we go through it in the summer.
And I'll add, the fact that we have significant turnback from departments is one of the reasons that this works. We have folks who are very interested in being good, prudent spenders of public funds. And so we don't have a use it or lose it kind of mentality across the county. And that is really, that's what helps this baseline setting work. If it was different, we might have a different process. But we have some pretty strong leaders who understand if you underspend, you don't get dinged next year for not spending your full amount. That we do start with a fair process. We do evaluate each service throughout these one-on-one meetings, and that's how we come to the budget with you all. I love the idea of a couple of departments doing some zero-based budgeting, and I think I would encourage us to this is a thing we should do in the future. It validates some of the assumptions we've been making without having to add the staff to do full-blown zero-based budgeting across the board. We don't have to have resources to do a couple of spot departments each year. And I think that is a good way to test the system and make sure that we're asking the right questions throughout the budget meetings, that, I think there are some budgeting processes that are very competitive. My service is more important than your service, when in fact, all the services the county provides are important in some way. And so it really isn't a matter of competition. It's just a matter of what we can afford, what level of service do you all want to provide, and how do we go forward and talk about that. So I kudos again to the leaders across the county who do a great job managing their budgets and those funds and turn them back if they're unspent.
I appreciate both of your answers, and I do appreciate how we do the budgeting since I've been here. I really like how I know it takes a lot of time for you all to have all those meetings, but it does feel like a very invested process. Everyone has a voice, and that we're starting from the boots on the ground up, and really getting buy-in for how we do this together. So I commend you for doing that, and I was curious about this shift, and so you kind of answered my other question. So I do think it's pretty cool how you do this, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavallis.
Thank you. So first of all, thanks to our budget team leader. I appreciate the further description, explanation of modified incremental budgeting and, perhaps a purer version of zero-based budgeting. Actually, what you shared continues to help me to understand these things, so thank you. I wonder if we could look at an example. So as I'm understanding the 3.5% personnel cost increase, so based on your explanation of modified incremental budgeting, that's the gap that we are anticipating. And so if we're spending whatever amount of money we're spending for personnel costs, based on market analysis and based on cost of living, we're saying that it's going to cost if we're spending 150, whatever the amount is, the operating budget is what, 200 million. If we're spending a certain amount for personnel, based on the analysis, we'll need an additional 3.5%, however many millions of dollars that is to cover this gap. Is that correct, Matthew, or could you expand on that?
Right. So the commissioner's office has a budget for the budget office, of public affairs, and you all. And so that budget, based on, and it has, health insurance and retirement and all of those lines that go with it. We do an estimate, how much are those going to increase? And then we ask Human Resources, for a placeholder on the salary line, because that's the biggest one, right? And so the budget for the commissioner's office will be 3.5% higher overall than it was this year for personnel only.
And the reason there's a note that that's a placeholder is, remember, you've not yet had the work session with Human Resources where they will actually have market data and come back to you. So if we put 0 there, we'd have to go find those funds. So we put something there. That is not necessarily what will flow through to the final budget. It is not necessarily what employees will receive on their anniversary date or in January. But for planning purposes, because that's really all we're doing now is beginning the planning process, we have to put some number in to acknowledge that there will be some kind of wage increase. We just don't know what till the end of June.
Thank you. And finally, if I may offer a suggestion for future reference to help folks like me, and certainly the public, the throngs that may be listening and watching, and that is, with each of these categories, it might be helpful to insert an example.
Oh, yeah.
Something to think about for
Yeah.
the future.
That's good feedback.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you. We'll keep going then, Matthew.
Okay. So this next slide is just some of the highlights besides the inflators. So one-time project funds have been removed. It was, a position only approved for 1 year, a limited term, a temp position to be work on one-time project. Those have been taken out. Cyclical programs such as elections, they don't have the same cost from year to year. There's a midterm election next year and a primary, so their budget's been adjusted for those cyclical costs. And then also we are shifting a few ongoing costs out of the disaster recovery fund to the general fund. This will be for engineering. They have flood monitoring costs that have been in Fund 105 disaster response. And then also non-declared disasters, when the sheriff's office goes out and puts out a fire, but it hasn't grown to the point where it's been a declared disaster that requires a helicopter response from outside agencies. We're shifting that budget, which has been in Fund 105 disaster response, over to their general fund budget, and they can just account for those costs with everything else. Then also, we are going to require all departments that have a waiver of indirect costs to resubmit those in 2026. So you have a chance to review all those that had been previously approved.
Commissioner Seneca McNally has a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That third bullet item will shift ongoing costs out of the disaster recovery fund to general fund. Is that, I know that the flood monitoring is, for the Cameron Peak probably, and also for the Alexander and Cedar Cove, and that actually came up this morning with the big Thompson Watershed Coalition or partnership meeting. I'm curious, is that a large amount of money, or is it, and will it be, how do we have any idea how long ongoing that might be? Or,
Yeah, so we had about $800,000 set aside in a reserve account in disaster response, and about $100,000 a year was going to be spent over multiple years. And then in our forecast, in 8 years, we had that cost going back into the general fund. Well, we thought, let's try and clean up the disaster fund and put the cost where it will eventually be. So we're transferring the full fund balance into general fund, and it is about $100,000 a year. If that needs to be reviewed in the future, we can always review
So that's
whether that needs to
become
be
an
on.
operational service that we just have as part of our engineering department.
and if I might, Madam Chair, so is that, considering we might have some uncertainty from federal and state helping, so this monitoring is stuff, well, I shouldn't say stuff, these are crucial things we need to do ongoing, because we're required, or because it's what we think is the best thing to do, or is this part of the NRCS or the emergency watershed protections? I'm just I know maybe I'm asking drilling down too far, but I'm just curious about how, because this could be a long time monitoring some of these areas, knowing how much we still have trees and debris up there. So I'm just curious about that.
So this is essentially an early warning system for flood, and this will be ongoing for the county. It's a service that we had a grant and support to purchase, and we had a little bit of money to operate on at the beginning. We set aside a little bit more, and it's sitting in a fund right now where Alexander Mountain Fire, Cameron Peak, where we're still waiting on federal or state bills or resources to come in, those kind of things. It's no longer appropriate to sit there because it really has become a thing the county does. Similarly, these non-declared disasters, you think of them more as incidents. So they're small fires that they go out and they put them out quickly, maybe in a matter of a day or two, where we don't need other resources. Sitting in that other fund doesn't make sense. That is not your savings account. That is not your disaster fund. This is the money you've set aside to actually pay for disasters that are ongoing or receive funds. So you have two separate ways that we do this. And frankly, it was getting to be very complicated between emergency management and the sheriff's office sending bills back and forth and who does the entry. Just to make it cleaner for the budget and the accounting team, it has a new home and it will not sit in this fund any longer. So it's a cleanup.
And so that is kind of the, like the recent Berthoud fire and all those kinds of
Yes.
things, and the 52 fires under 300 acres, that was.
That's right.
The 900,000 for those, okay. Yeah, that's helpful for my brain to understand what that all looks like. So thank you for letting me answering that question, because it does sound like it's a little complex, so thanks.
Okay. So now the moment we've all been waiting for, the actual targets for 2026. Just to review some of the changes that are not just spreading the peanut butter. The clerk and recorder mentioned this, the election year costs going up 100% from 25 to 26 due to the midterms. Just higher turnout, more ballots to process, more elections. The Board of Equalization, this is going to be a non-reappraisal year. This 26, 25 is a reappraisal year, so that budget's being decreased by 85%, $85,000. Sustainability and climate had a grant baked in 2025 that's being removed, or the expenses related to those revenues are being taken out. Our office is adding the Power DMS policy management software license. I think that was approved at carryover. There's the flood monitoring costs we mentioned. Some of these other departments are just, the net change is just the result of those inflators. We'll call out that community development and engineering, we're working with them directly to build their budgets from the ground up. And so those targets their budgets will be whatever we agree is needed for those programs to continue. Extension is seeing a reduction in their target due to the end of a limited term position. The sheriff's office, it looks like a big change, but that's really the result of the revenue that had been provided to offset the cost of the emergency services building in 2025. It's being taken out, and so the target is being adjusted to account for that gap. And also the non-declared disaster costs are added there, which is also about $100,000 a year. The treasurer's target is kind of interesting in that it's a negative target. All of the interest earnings revenues for all funds countywide are recorded as a revenue in the treasurer's budget. And so their revenues more than cover their expenses, so they actually have a negative target that they're expected to turn back. And so with the increase in tax collection fees and interest earnings, that target is the amount of support they need is decreasing, because the revenues are going up essentially. I'm sorry if that's confusing, and I'm happy to try and explain it better.
Can I ask a question? Do any of these reflect, were there any unfunded mandates in the previous year in the legislative session that affect any of these numbers?
Not that we have built a number into. We have heard about in the sheriff's office, they may be required to do more firearms licensing, but there are maybe fees associated with that, and we don't know the number yet. And so I guess the short answer is no.
So we also don't make the assumption that folks will need more, that maybe they'll shift what they currently do, and if they do need additional resources, they'll submit a service proposal to talk about what that incremental difference looks like. In some cases, like Josh was explaining, some departments will say, well, I guess we'll do less of this and more of this new thing we're required to do and still live within their target. So we don't assume that they'll necessarily need more, but we know we'll be able to provide that to you when we look at service proposals.
Yeah, and I think that fees could offset in the case that you're talking about with the sheriff's office, there's a potential that fees could offset some of those increases, fees for that licensing or that classes that they might have to offer.
Because that was permitted in legislation, that they could charge for those services, yes.
And then with regard to interest, what are we seeing in that space? So, I mean, is there any projections on, what interest rates will do, or, how much interest we're going to, the treasurer's office might be bringing in? Is that?
I think without speaking for the treasurer, they have made some long-term investments that they are hopeful that will increase interest revenue next year. Maybe in terms of revenue from interest significantly for that. So, and Irene does great work and her staff does great work to evaluate longer-term holding versus short-term and lock in better investments. And their prospect is very rosy, we'll say. We have to see what comes to fruition, or if we have to pull money out earlier than we anticipated to do a project or to respond to a disaster, those kind of things. But what number are we plugging in, do you know?
For 26, it's about 12 million a year for the next few years. A year ago, we were expecting interest rates to decline. And as the Federal Reserve has held interest rates pretty much flat for the past 6 months to a year, the Treasurer's Office is able to lock in the rolling reserves into investments at those higher rates. So we're expecting to see that for the next few 2 to 3 years at least.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate that you mentioned the county treasurer, Irene Josie, has been really good with, when we talk about stewardship of dollars, that extends towards how do we grow some of those dollars in the best way we can to be able to have them for reserves and emergency situations and capital costs and all these other big expenses. So wanted to, thank you for doing a shout out to her, because that piece is really important.
Okay. And finally is all the transfers from non-departmental to various special revenue funds or special purpose funds. This would include the 3 non-general fund mill levies. And aside from the ranch, which has got a limited term 1-year position that's ending in 26, these are all being adjusted by those inflators. Okay, so what is next for us? Next Friday, we have our budget kickoff with staff. We'll review these targets. We'll talk about the process, budget timeline going into the summer. You will have a compensation work session with Human Resources. I think we usually come to that too and sign off and say that it's possible or not. And then we will have a budget retreat with you all to provide updates on efficiency and project reviews, July 23rd. 5-year capital programs are due August 1st. The first Friday of the month is on a first, so it's a little tight this year for some departments. They don't have that extra 6 days. And then the operating request will be due the following Friday, and we will build the budget from there.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Happy to answer other questions, though, or clarify anything.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew or the team? Commissioner?
Okay.
I guess the only thing is, I think it would be valuable to maybe go back and remind the public when they can do input, how they can give input to the budget, as people, see, kind of what we're facing and what initial targets look like. I think it's really great to have that public. So do we know what those dates are? We're kind of forming those dates for public input, but there's opportunities maybe online to at least look at the budget and look at previous budgets and.
Right. So the three main ways to influence the budget, we always tell people. The first one is to join an advisory board. Many program budgets that people have a special interest in are guided by a strategic plan or a capital plan that's approved and reviewed by the Board of Health or the Natural Resources Open Lands Advisory Board. So if you want to get really specific, that's a great way to do it if you have the time. The second way to influence the budget is to meet with you, to contact you, email you as their elected representatives. You approve and vote on the budget. And we usually do at least once a year with you all a community conversation where we go to the library and have an informal chat about the budget. And then the third way to influence the budget would be to register to vote and review ballot items related to taxes because those significantly impact the budget. And I will remind folks that at larimer.gov/budget/explorer, we have a visualization tool where you can review where the money's coming from, where it's going, capital plans, with lots of fun details.
Thank you, Matthew. That was really helpful. Commissioner Kovales.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I was going to ask in reference the Budget Explorer, so I appreciate you speaking to that. Are we able to update that data, with the current reappraisals? I mean, is that new information in there, or how does that work, Matthew?
Yeah, we update it once a year with the adoption of the budget. So what you'll see on there now is the 2025 budget. It includes a property tax receipt. So it pulls data from the assessor's website where you can see the value of your house, but it's for the taxes paid in 25. So the reappraisal for 26 taxes, it's the 25 tax year, budget year 26. That'll come out and refresh in January of 2026. Yeah. But you can see your values updated online too, on the assessor's website.
So the current reappraisal that some of us received is not reflected in the Budget Explorer. It'll be reflected next year.
There's a protest period and,
I know.
right.
I'm learning, yes, of course. Participated and have.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
Matt.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Couple things. First, I'm just curious about the strengths, opportunities, and weaknesses that we have from departments. Are these listed in rank of priority or urgency, or are they just kind of generally, this is the group?
Yeah. I don't think they're ranked in order of priority. There wasn't a prioritization process formally. We did meet, it would be the department directors and elected offices representatives in each of these service areas take about 2 hours to review what had been brought up last year, see if it's still relevant, add things, change the wording, have a discussion, and then just make the list from there.
So these are more, as the group sits and talks and thinks of things, they're sort of how they come out, almost like a whiteboard, during a meeting itself. I think if you think of them that way, I don't know that they have time to really prioritize, or maybe even could prioritize some of these over others. Maybe fiscal is always first, but after that, it's really hard to say, is a fire response more important than, some other kind of response? I think that the distillation process that you came up with does have a bit of judgment in it because you all did pull information from these, and so that may be the closest thing to a priority list, but there wasn't a process to do that either.
Okay. And then my next comment is, I'm glad you brought up Budget Explorer. I rarely go to one of my community conversations or town halls without pulling that out and showing people. I certainly show different neighborhoods and different property values and sales tax receipts, and certainly what, metro district, homes in metro districts versus homes not in metro districts, and comparing and showing, because, I think it's still confusing for a lot of the general public. Just because we collect the property taxes doesn't mean we get all that money. When I show actually what we get compared to the other taxing entities, it's been really, especially for older adults who are still trying, unlimited budgets, it's been very enlightening. And so it's been coming up more and more where people are taking this actually to their book clubs and things. So I don't know if you see increased traffic, but I printed out some sheets from home to give to people to help them kind of explore and explain. So I have to still say thank you for getting that built and done, because I think for me individually, the commissioner, I'm sure my colleagues feel like it's a good tool too, but I really use it a lot for education and helping folks understand that we don't get all that money. It goes to lots of different taxing agencies. So I appreciate it. And I realize sometimes when I do it on my phone versus other things, it works differently. So I've learned to pick, I know which phone it works best on now. So,
Okay.
but I just wanted to again commend you for developing that and getting that done, because I still find it a very extremely useful tool when trying to be out and educate the public on things. So I want to just make sure I still very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kafalo.
Yes. First of all, gratitude, thank you. Appreciate. You guys are pretty good at this. So thank you very much for that. A question that I have, and Commissioner Shattuck McNally reminded me, but I'm wondering, in addition to the Budget Explorer, which is an amazing tool to try to understand all these complexities, we typically have produced a budget brief. Do we have a budget brief that is like a 4, 5, 6-page document that's a lot easier to review in terms of revenue, expenses, capital, operating? Do we have that, sir?
I don't
we
know if
produce one
we.
for this year?
I don't know if we printed one for this year.
But we have it online?
I'd have to go check.
I believe our PBS guy is.
It looks like we do not yet have the budget in brief document up on our website, but we can add that to it. That's a four-page document that has basic charts on the sources of revenue, the service areas that our expenditures go to, and then a brief explanation of how property taxes work and kind of where they go, like Commissioner Shattuck McNally mentioned.
Is it a lot of work to update that? Because if it's not, I think we ought to. And I know we're not printing them anymore, but it would be nice for us to have a couple of copies to bring around.
Yeah, we can get you some. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, with regard to Commissioner Shattuck McNally, I think, I agree that the budget tools online are very valuable to explaining to the public. I often refer to them before I go out and talk to folks. Certainly, one of the things to note in that is that approximately 50% of our budget goes to public safety. A lot of that is required by the state. So as far as discretionary funds, there aren't many, so we will just say that. And then to say that, when we talk about something like transportation, and people say, why can't you use the money that you have better than you do? Most folks pay about 50 cents a month, is that right? Towards 75 cents a month towards transportation in our community out of their property tax dollars. And that doesn't get you a lot of road. Thinking about projects like on I-25, 6 miles of I-25 expansion costs $330 million. Repaving roads, there's, mile of road is $2 million. So, we are trying to stretch the dollars that we have, and they only go so far. So that is a good tool for the public to use to see, what we're required to do, where we do expend those dollars, and just having that knowledge is really important as we go forward. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you all for your presentation. We are not quite halfway through the budgeting process, so there's more to come, and we hope that people will stay engaged and let us know if they have any questions or concerns or ways that they think we should spend these important dollars. and I'll give the last word to our county manager.
That was a great segue because I think we do need to invite the public to provide their thoughts and ideas on what they like that we do, what ideas they have for reductions. Those will all be taken into consideration, just like every idea from the 200 ideas the employees have submitted. So we really would love to hear. We try to create avenues to make that happen. Certainly you all are an avenue, so am I, so is the BOCC at larimer.org generic email address. Those come into this office directly. So just invite the public to participate formally and informally as we go through this process.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Acknowledge that we have 2 service area directors and 1 department director here in case there were specific questions, I presume, regarding budget matters in their areas. Appreciate Leslie, Ken, and Laura. I wanted to say
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm sure there are others listening online, and I'm sure they were here for information and also for their own information for their staff. So we appreciate that engagement. So with that, we are done earlier than we expected. It is 2:41 and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.